Please join me in welcoming writer-director Andrew Bujalski.
Thank you, Austin, Texas. Holly, I didn't know there were going to be chairs. I would have, because I have the editor here, Karen Skloss, as well. Karen Skloss.
That's awesome. Yay.
And I think because we're local yokels that we have some cast and crew here as well. Who's here? I know Chris Brown is here. I know Elizabeth True is here. I can't see who that is raising their hand in the back.
Yeah.
But it's somebody who worked on the movie.
Yeah, if y'all can stand up so we can see you, because we've got some cast and crew. Say hello.
Eric Olson. Derek Jensen. Elizabeth, Chris.
Chris
Very
was
cool.
here. I saw him earlier. There's
Yes.
editor Karen Skloss.
And Karen Skloss.
Wonderful.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for sticking around.
So, what I love this movie, and one thing I love so much about it is all of the agency that these women have in this environment that is so typically what we would think is really degrading to women. And so, can you talk a little bit about that, sort of centering a women's story? It's truly a women's story in this type of environment.
Yeah, well, I think I went into one of these places a decade or so ago, and I don't know what I was expecting, but something about it surprised me. Or it's such a peculiar product they're selling in there that seemed certainly uniquely American to me, and so it just lodged in my head, and I kept thinking there was a story there, but I knew it wasn't going to be an easy story to tell, and it wasn't going to be conventional drama, because it's not. So much of what goes on in there is kind of boring. That's, to me, that's what's interesting about it, is that it is boring, is that it's more about comfort than anything else. And so, of course, the women are the ones who are there working every day, and they're the ones who have to run the show. And that, to me, that I don't know where else the story would be located, but with them. And as you say, I mean, they have agency, but it is whether it's degrading or not, I think is certainly a matter of perspective, both yours looking at them and theirs, how they're feeling about it. And certainly I got the impression that there was everything in there from, that there were a lot of different types of women working there, from the kind of Danielle character who is someone who looks at it as a job and a performance that she turns on and off, to a Macy who has internalized it more for whatever reason, whether she's coming from the same culture that the restaurant is coming from or whatever. It's something that, some of them it seems to come very naturally to. So I was interested in all that. I was interested in how everybody bounced off the concept, that both the women who work there and also the customers and also the managers, everybody had kind of slightly different ideas of what was going on there. But weirdly, it kind of works. Yeah. It's 95% self-policing. Most people are very polite in there and follow the rules and understand the rules, which is sort of fascinating to me. That's why I think only in this culture, in this era, would this exist, where people want a little bit of raunch wrapped in a lot of TGI Fridays.
And talk about the importance of this cast that came together for you to make this story. I think the Regina Hall is just incredible, and these sort of three women that we see at the end of the film really ground it. How did you find these actors, and talk a little bit about sort of how these characters came to be through them?
The Lisa character is certainly the linchpin of this thing. She's in almost every scene. She's in almost every shot of every scene, and it's a very, I think, challenging role for an actor, because she's rarely playing one thing at a time. She has a lot going on, but most of the time she's repressing whatever she has going on to try to take care of somebody else. Regina was her name came up early, and I was intrigued, and I knew some of her work, certainly not all of it, because she's got a crazy resume. I mean, she works a lot. And I went to meet with her and was just really taken with her. And there's this kind of, as a director, I think when you sit down with somebody, you start to, you're kind of half paying attention to them, but half imagining their voice in the voice of the character, or vice versa. And I was excited by what I was hearing. And I thought, okay, this could work. That could be Lisa. And then she came down and exceeded all of our expectations at every turn. Haley Lee Richardson, who plays Macy, was she's certainly a young up and comer. I don't know if I knew her work before this, but she surprised me too. She got at something about that character that none of the other young women who I talked to about it or who sent in tapes seemed to. Because I think a lot of people wanted to play that character as a kind of Hollywood sexy, wanted to do a seductive Macy, which was not really, to me, what that character or what these places are about. They're not particularly sexy places. They're much more about, it's more of a girl next door fantasy, depending what who you live next door to. And she got that. I mean, that was all very, the kind of the bouncy bubbliness was something that came very naturally. And once I saw that, I said, okay, that's it. That's Macy. And Shayna McHale, who plays Danielle, this is her first movie. She's a musician, a rapper named Jungle Pussy. Well, all of you should check her out. She's amazing. I've gotten better over the course of doing press at saying that out loud without blushing. And that was a real shot in the dark, because when you make a movie like this, you talk to agencies and they send you lists of like, here are the people we represent. And I always feel like part of my due diligence is to just say, hang on, who's not on the list? Who else can we think about? And so I think this was just me, because I think musicians are usually good actors. Mm-hmm. So I just Googled, young female musicians, something. Somehow I Googled around and watched a Jungle Pussy video. And but then also, her videos are great, but also you find videos of her lecturing on nutrition at Yale. I mean, she's got layers, and I was just really intrigued by her. And we put word out to her management and said, is Shayna interested in acting? And she was, and she did a screen test. And that, again, it was that thing where you see the character and you go, oh, okay, that's it. She can do it. And so very lucky to get her to come do it. And again, first-time actor, you don't know what you're going to get, but she knocked our socks off. And Karen, I think, can attest that when we were sitting in the editing room, I always thought the phrase, the camera loves her, that always seemed silly to me. But then, she's just has a mesmerizing face. We would just sit there and watch close-ups of her and kind of get distracted and try to remember that we were working. She's pretty remarkable on screen.
Yeah, what is it about musicians that makes them good actors, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think it has something to do with, a kind of alertness and aliveness to rhythm. I mean, I think to me, a lot of film, or at least a lot of how I interact with film or like to try to compose it, is as a kind of piece of music, and both, you kind of write the score, but then you improvise on the score. There's a kind of, not that I know anything about jazz, but it's, there's a kind of jazz to making the movie where you take these ideas and then you play with them, and just take after take, it's going to be a little different every time. And I feel like musicians have a good instinct for that. I don't know that all of them do, but I've had good luck with them anyway.
So all your films, and then I'll open up to the audience in just a second, are so contingent on dialogue, and it's a very, very hard thing to do, and something that is hard to learn and hard to teach. So how can you talk a little bit about your writing process and then translating that to screen, especially in terms of how you make dialogue work? And you're talking about music and rhythm, and what of that do you bring to it, to writing your dialogue?
Yeah, I think it starts with hearing voices in your head, and then you try to write them down, and then you go back and try to weed out the parts that feel more like writing and less like voices in your head. But then the actors bring it to life. That's, to me, the real joy. My wife is a novelist, and she's great, but I don't know how she does it, because she has to go into a room by herself every day. And for me, I do some of that, but I know that I'm allowed to leave the room at some point and bring in other people and let their voices bring it to life, and that's a real joy. So I think as a writer, I also am aware that I don't have to finish it. I'm writing the blueprint, and then these women are going to build it for me.
Mm-hmm. What questions do y'all have for Andrew? Yes, over here. Okay, so question about a scene between Lisa and Cameron, is that
Yeah,
right?
the husband, Cameron.
And so making a scene where we as the audience don't know anything really yet about this relationship, and you've managed to translate so much of the backstory into it.
Yeah. Well, as you say, it's just that we're taking on just that challenge of how much can we squeeze into how little, and it's a testament again to the performers. Lawrence Varnado, who is a local Austin actor who played Cameron, he and Regina really got into it. I remember when we were shooting those scenes, they got very method, and they would just bicker between takes, to the degree that I got afraid to approach them. I would want to say like, okay, guys, so we're setting up, but then I would kind of hang back because they were going at it. And so, I mean, and honestly, I think it helped a great deal because a lot of that was in there. They weren't bickering so much in the scene. Mostly they were holding that back. But having worked that out together, you felt like a lot of that. And you know, we had conversations. I was lucky to have a little bit of time with both of them just to start to talk through what all the fault lines in that relationship could be. And they had the time together, which I think goes incredibly far. It's a tricky. That was the big challenge of this whole movie for me because it's a 90-minute movie with I don't know like an incredible number of characters in it, and all of them, if it's going to work, need to feel like they have something behind them. So that was always the game, was trying to get as much into as little all the time.
Other questions? Yes, over here. So talk about how much the actors must rely on the script when you're shooting, and is there any improvisation?
I love improvisation, and I almost wish we had more of it in this movie. Part of what was another tricky thing about this movie is that there's so much choreography in it because there are so many moving parts, and there are very few what I would even think of as conventional scenes. And so this was yet another challenge for us in the editing room. There are a lot of things where, you know, Lisa walks into the room, somebody gets her attention from over here, she turns this way, but somebody else comes from this direction with another problem. So in some cases, we were quite limited in what we could do editing-wise because it wasn't the kind of thing where you could spread out and I much prefer to spread out and have fun and have adventures, but a lot of this movie was just choreography. So that was a kind of editing on set in a way where we're just trying to get things as right as we can as we shoot. And another, again, I know I keep repeating myself and saying it's a testament to the actors and a testament to Karen that she made it work, but that's you just get good people around you and then you take the credit.
Karen, the editor, that's crucial.
Yes.
Yes, right here. Right. So talk about what sort of some of the sources that could have inspired this, any books or films that you were thinking of as you were writing this.
You know, I'm sure there are a lot. At this point, my head is so muddled. I don't. There's no one specific kind of source text for this, and I don't know why not. But I think I'm sure you could pull some things out if you looked for them. But in a way, I felt oddly liberated from that in this movie. I didn't. It's good. It's because it's daunting when you are saying, well, I'm going to make something like Kubrick, and then you go, oh shit. Yeah. So I did. I wasn't. There was no particular North Star of another movie this time.
Other questions? Yes, right in the center, sir.
I wish I could say.
Did you read your New York Times review?
I'm above all that. No, I read it. I read most of the reviews and most of the tweets too. I can't help it. I think of it sometimes as having like a really bad therapist, you know, because when you read reviews and certainly tweets, you do learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about what you've done. Sometimes from crazy sources, but I do find it useful.
Tell us some film writing that you like in terms of criticism or people who write about films.
There's a lot of good folks out there, but I'm biased towards the one who give me good reviews.
So look for those, only those. Other questions? I think I saw one or two more hands. So yes, right over here. Okay, so the part where she's in the car with her boss.
Yeah.
Yes. So did you shoot that with 2 cameras, and can you talk about the choreography of that scene in particular, and how you pull off that kind of scene in a car?
I've made 6 movies that have car scenes, and every time I say I'm never going to do another scene in a car, it's horrible. And this was scary because it was on the highway, and I think James LeGros literally saved my life. In addition to being a great actor, he's also a great driver. And we had a police escort, and I know this wasn't your question. Sorry, I'm just reliving a near-death experience. We had a police escort, which is supposed to make things safer, but the problem is they're flashing sirens, and so everybody on the road thinks that they're getting pulled over, so then people pull in front of your car and almost kill you. But no, 1 camera is the answer to the question. Yeah. 1 camera, it was a nerve-wracking shoot because we are on the highway. But those actors were great, and we just, we kind of went out and grabbed as much material as efficiently as we could, because it is a little nerve-wracking to do those scenes while driving on the highway. So that was. I remember that day thinking, like, these actors are great. My heart is beating really fast because I'm terrified, but I think we got what we need. And then we got in the editing room and we found it. LeGros was a great pleasure to work with, and a great. I love him as an actor, and I love him as a person. And he came in really last minute for this movie. We'd had another actor who we'd lost, so it was one of these things where we offered the part to James on a Friday, and he was working on Monday. And just because I'd been a fan of his for 30 years, I thought, I think we're going to be okay. And he was great.
Any final questions? Yes, over here. Okay. So 2 questions. Question about the heart stickers and sort of how you came up with that as an idea, and it played out beautifully as a metaphor in the film. And how did you decide on Steph Curry as the subject for, I guess, the tattoo?
Yeah, heart stickers. I don't know. My wife makes fun of me because I always love stickers and T-shirts and coffee mugs as plot devices. They're very convenient. It's just a symbol, and you can. But I can't remember where the idea came from. I liked it, and we got away with it. As for Steph Curry, this is one of these things you try to. It's hard to explain how these things, but you think about it and you go, I'm pretty sure that Steph is funnier than LeBron. Why? I'm not sure, but it's just one of those deep comedy secrets. But it's scary when you shoot a movie and you go, in the 20, it's like, what will this person, will there be a sex scandal between now and then? Not to say anything about Steph in particular, but with any celebrity, you just don't know where their stock will be by the time the movie comes out. But he's doing great. Yeah.
There was one question, sir, in the white. Yes. Yeah, can you talk about costume? Because the audience member said that you really nailed the costumes for these characters, and they felt so authentic. So how do you do that without stepping over the line and getting into parody?
Costume designer Colin Wilkes, and production designer Jake Kuykendall really got what we were going for, and really had so many great ideas and brought so many great details. The gentleman who mentioned the New York Times review, that tickled me about the Times review, is that she gave me a lot of credit and then listed a lot of details that came from Colin and Jake that I had nothing to do with. But I approved them. I said, yes, good job.
Great. Any final questions? I wanted to, before we go today, I just wanted to ask you, shooting this in Austin, now you've made several films in Austin, and what changed for you about our city making this film? How did you see it through a different lens after shooting this?
Well, we were in such an odd corridor. It's a movie, we shot in Austin, but it's, in theory, it doesn't take place. Now, if you look really carefully, there's some, this kind of, we decided that it took place maybe a little outside of Houston, so there's a few kind of markers of that. But just because I felt like Austin brought some particular associations that didn't necessarily help us. It's certainly very Texan, this movie. So, but also this is a part of Austin. It's a part of all of the United States, highway world. It's this liminal zone between real places. There is the kind of imaginary place of highway world, and that's where most of these restaurants are. And that's where this movie takes place, and that's where we spent our time. It got a little depressing at times, but I knew that was there. I've done my time on I-35, as I'm sure all of you have as well. It's a reality that maybe we shut out, but some people have to live there, I guess.
So the movie's playing all week here, and so please spread the word about going to see the film. We're so happy to have you, and congrats to all the cast and crew who are here for all of your amazing work.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Holly.